Hi, I'm Alan Gubanich, a former faculty member at the University of Nevada here in Reno. I taught in the biology department for 35 years. But I'm also a long-time member of our local Lahontan Audubon Society, LAS as we call ourselves. Here's Lahontan Audubon Society. Our logo is the American white pelican in honor of the pelicans that nest out at Pyramid Lake on Anaco Island. Most people don't even know we have pelicans in Nevada, but that's one of the largest, sometimes the largest, nesting colony of American white pelicans in the western states. Today I'm here to talk about these taxidermy mounts that we have up here at the Galena Creek Visitor Center. We have over 200 taxidermy mounts of birds that are on display here. People can come in and look at them anytime that they want. But our Lahontan Audubon Society, we use these for educational outreach. These birds are taken out of the visitor center from time to time. We take them into local schools to talk to kids about birds. We do demonstrations for adults and kids in various venues. We have classes on how to identify birds, both talks here that I give here at the visitor center and classes that we have down at Moana Nursery. And we use these taxidermy mounts to help people try to understand birds. Now, one of the first questions I always get from kids when we bring out the taxidermy mounts is, are these real? And I always have to say, yes, these are real birds. They were alive at one time. They were all found dead and brought to me. I have the actual collecting permits that allows me and the Lahontan Audubon Society to have these specimens. It's against the law for people without permits to have any of these. But we have the proper permits. And we do not go out and collect these birds. We don't shoot them. We don't trap them. We don't do anything like that. These are all birds that were found dead somewhere and then brought to me. Then I take them to our local taxidermist, a fellow in Sparks, Whispering Wings, LLC, yeah, Whispering Wings in Sparks. And he does all these for us, and he does a fantastic job. Why do we use taxidermy mounts like this when we're trying to talk about birds? Well, you know, most presentations that people get, they show slides, like a PowerPoint slide. I do that too, and in fact I will be doing several talks here, and have done several talks here at the Visitor Center using PowerPoint. If I put up a picture of, say, a robin like this, you don't really have too much trouble recognizing the size, do you? I think most people probably recognize robins, right? But suppose I flipped up photos of these birds, and in fact I will put up these photos of these birds in some of my presentations. Do you have any idea what their sizes are? It's hard to tell because the birds have been basically full frame shots. They look huge. One of the questions I invariably get when I do my PowerPoints is, hey, how big is that? So if I have the taxidermy mounts available, I can show them. For example, this one, let's start with this one. This is a Cooper's hawk, and it's that big. The one next to it, the Downy Woodpecker, much smaller, only this size. I'll put it down to that hawk to compare it. And then this guy is called a lesser goldfinch, and look at the size of the lesser goldfinch. Boy, that guy's tiny, isn't he? Now, compare those with the taxidermy mounts. It's easy to see the size differences. Okay? Not so easy when you see those large pictures of them in something like a PowerPoint presentation. So this helps the people to get a feel for the size of the birds. And in fact, if you're just getting into birding, one of the most useful things you can do is get some relative sizes of birds in your head so you can compare them. When I taught at the university, I would often get people call me and they say, I saw this bird in my yard that I don't recognize. It had some yellow on the head and there was some white in the tail and some yellow on the wing. And the first question I ask them is, how big was it? Because once they tell me the size, then I can zero in on what bird it probably is and eliminate all the others that are not that size. So for everybody, I think a good size to use as a reference starting point is the American robin. Everybody, I think, hopefully everybody knows and recognizes the American robin and has a pretty good idea of what its size is. I think most people also recognize pigeons, right? pigeons are a little bit bigger than a robin. Then you get a little bit larger. This is a crow. A crow is definitely much bigger than a robin. And if you want, you could even go as high as a raven. A raven is much, much bigger than a robin. And of course, what everybody always asks is, how do you tell a raven from a crow? Well, I don't have time to do that today, I apologize, but I will do that in one of my video presentations later. Now, going down in the opposite direction, here's our robin again. Well, we saw that the Downy Woodpecker is much smaller than a robin. We also have another woodpecker called the Northern Flicker, also called the red-shafted flicker, and this one is about the same size as a robin. Maybe a little bit bigger, but about the same size. Then you get something like sparrows. These two are white-crowned sparrows, an adult on the bottom and an immature on the top, considerably much smaller than a robin, right? Or a house sparrow that probably everybody has in their yard, or even something called a house finch, about the same as a sparrow. So sparrow size, that's another good size thing to have in your mind. You can go even smaller to the one that I showed you before, the lesser goldfinch. Goldfinches are much smaller than robins. If you want to get even smaller, of course, you go to hummingbirds. Hummingbirds are among the smallest of all the birds we have in the state of Nevada. In fact, we also have a hummingbird. I don't have a specimen of it. We have a hummingbird called the calliope hummingbird that occurs in northern Nevada. It is the smallest bird in all of North America. Okay, so you got some references. You start with robin size, then pigeon size, crow size, sparrow size, goldfinch size. There's also a group of birds known as warblers that are kind of a little bit smaller than sparrows but bigger than goldfinches. So that's another reference, sparrow size, and then hummingbirds. So that's the main reason I like to use these taxidermy mounts along with presentations of PowerPoint pictures. This helps to answer people's questions about what's the size of the bird. They can actually see it. It's great also to have these taxidermy mounts here so that someone can pick up the taxidermy mount and they can look at it and see a lot of the different features on the bird that you wouldn't necessarily see in just one single photo on the screen. But we also ask people to be careful. We ask people, please do not touch the specimens. They're fragile, they can break easily. You have no idea how much Elmer's glue I have on some of these specimens. You know, when I'm transporting them and putting them in boxes, I can sometimes break a wing off or twist a head or break a tail or whatever, so I have to glue them back on. So they're really fragile, so we ask people to only handle them by the base, like this. An example of damage to one of these, this was the first hummingbird specimen that we got. And after it was taxidermied, it was taken out to a classroom visit somewhere, I forget where. It came back with half the tail feathers are missing. One wing is gone, and the beak was broken off. So, disclaimer here, I found a little piece of metal here, a little wire, and I glued that on so it looks like the beak. So that's a fake beak right there. So after this happened, we definitely told school kids, and this was a school kid visit, please do not touch the specimens, handle them only by the base. Taxidermy mounts also help us to distinguish between different groups of birds. For example, if you see a bird, there are three things that pop into your mind. You may not realize it, but think about it. You see a bird fly by, or you see it sitting on a tree somewhere, or a branch. First of all, you see size, color, and shape. those three things come into your mind automatically. And I think one of the first things is color. Suppose you saw an orange bird like this flying by. And here it is in a flight position. There are very few birds here in northern Nevada that are colored orange and black. So if you knew what to look for, you would take your guidebook, this one is the National Geographic Field Guide, and you would turn to a group of birds known as the orioles, which I'm not going to do here at the time, but that would lead you right to that bird. If you saw a bird like this, bright yellow with some red on the head, or maybe just this dull sort of olive greenish yellowish color, that could lead you to another group of birds in your bird guide. This is a western tanager, male and female. Or you saw a black bird with a yellow head. Well, there's only one bird here in northern Nevada that has that characteristic, that color pattern. Plus the size. This would be what, compared to a robin? A little bit bigger than a robin, right? This is a young yellow-headed blackbird. The actual adult males, the whole head is bright yellow, but I don't have a specimen of that. Or suppose there was a bluish bird that flew by, like this one, or this one. Well, it's a bluebird, right? Well, yeah, you're right, bluebird. But we have two different kinds of bluebirds here. This one is a male mountain bluebird. In fact, this is the Nevada state bird. I always ask kids that when we do this in the kids' visits, and most of the time they know it. I was always impressed. The male mountain bluebird. This is a pair of western bluebirds with the male on top and the female on the bottom. Notice in many birds the males are more brightly colored than the females. There's different plumages in those two sexes. We call that dimorphism. We say the birds are dimorphic. And in my presentations I list those for the birds, and you can see the spelling D-I-M-O-R-P-H-I-C, dimorphic. That prefix di, of course, meaning two. And so I always ask the guys and the girls in the classroom, why are the birds more pretty colored than the females? And I get all kinds of answers, and usually we hone in on they're trying to attract the girls and so on. And then why are the females so dull colored? And all kinds of questions. And we finally get down to the fact that in many of these birds, the females sitting on the nest, they're camouflaged. They blend in with the background so that predators can't find them. So I always end up saying, well, I guess it's a basic biological fact, guys, that birds are better looking, boys are better looking than girls. And you can imagine the comments and the looks I get from the girls in the class. Here's another example of dimorphism. This is a female and male western tanager. The male, again, is more brightly colored than the female. In many other birds, the male and the female look alike. In the Steller's jay and the other California scrub jay that we have here, you can't tell males from females. So we say these birds are monomorphic. M-O-N-O, morphic. Mono meaning one. One morph. Morph refers to the appearance of the bird. The shape, the size, the appearance, and so on. So these are all one morph, monomorphic, whereas these guys are two morphs, dimorphic. Okay? So you have to learn when you're getting into birding which birds are monomorphic and which birds are dimorphic. We can also use these taxidermy mounts to help people distinguish between similar looking kinds of birds. Another thing that helps you identify birds is the overall shape of the bird. When you take a look at the shape of this bird, well, what do you think? Duck, right? Some people look at the shape of this bird, especially when it's swimming in the water, and they also say duck. But having the taxidermy mount, we can show people, look at the difference in the feet for one thing, and the shape and size of the bird. There's a group of birds called grebes, G-R-E-B-E-S, grebes, and this is a pied-billed grebe, not a duck at all, although many people mistake it as a duck. So this is why we like to use these taxidermy mounts. Point out the differences in males and females, point out the differences in size and shape of the different individual species like I talked about before, and give people a chance to really examine the overall total bird as opposed to just seeing a part of the bird in a photo. We're always looking for more birds to add to the collection. There are certain species that we don't have, and I'd love if people found some of those birds, contact me and we'll try to get it from you. So if you find a bird, a dead bird that's in good condition, you know, it's not all dried out, it's not got maggots crawling on it or anything, put the bird in a plastic bag. Put a piece of paper in there with your name on it as the collector. Put the date you found it and the location, and then put that bag, squeeze all the air out of it. I even put a rubber bands around it to keep it tight, and throw it in a freezer. Then contact me and I will come get the bird from you somehow.